Government report says UK airports must be closed to reach the 250 climate target. A team of academics have called for the closure of every UK airport, to ensure that greenhouse gas emissions are brought down to zero in 2050. What is going on here? The report states that to obey the law of the Climate Change Act, the public will be required to stop doing anything that causes emissions regardless of its energy source. I guess we'll have to go back to using bicycles. Now, this means that all UK airports will be ordered to close, eating beef and lamb will be banned, and construction of new buildings must cease in order to meet the legal commitment of zero emissions by 2050. Can you imagine? The report, produced by academics of Oxford University and Imperial College London for the British government, says that all airports should close between 2020 and 29, with the exception of Heathrow, Glasgow, and Belfast. These would close down between 2030 and 2049. In one of the most incredible reports about UK climate policy to date, the academics also call for eating beef and lamb to be banned, and for people to turn their heating down at home and wear more clothes to keep warm instead. The exposed reports, all remaining airports must then close between 2030 and 49, as to meet the legal commitment of zero emissions by 2050. Every citizen in the UK must stop using airplanes for a significant period of time. In addition, the report states that to obey the law of the Climate Change Act, the public will be required to stop doing anything that causes emissions, regardless of its energy use. According to the report, this will require the public to never eat beef or lamb ever again. To do this, the national consumption of beef and lamb will drop by 50% between 2020 and 2029. So obviously, they're going to close down livestock production. Then between 2030 and 49, beef and lamb will be phased out, quote unquote. The report also confirms that construction of new buildings must cease by 2050. All right? The underlying point is that any asset which uses carbon will have essentially zero value in 2050. This in turn may encourage greater use in the run-up to 2050. For example, putting up new buildings at a much faster rate for the next 30 years, knowing that construction must then halt. The report was released November 2019 and was authored by UK Fires, a collaboration between University of Oxford, Cambridge, Nottingham, Bath, Imperial College London, the home of Professor Neil Ferguson. Entitled Absolute Zero, the report is a research collaboration in which the authors reveal what the UK must do to meet its legal requirement to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And it makes for harrowing reading. However, the timeline of events may speed up significantly because the government enshrined a new target in law in April 2021 to slash emissions by 78% by the year 2035. The authors of the report state the key messages are as follows. In addition to reducing our energy demand, delivering zero emissions with today's technologies requires the phasing out of flying, shipping, lamb and beef, blast furnace, steel, and cement. They also state this on jobs and location. There are two key implications for how we live our lives. First, buildings will become much more expensive because of the restrictions on building which generate substantial scarcities. Second, transportation will become much more expensive because the limits on air travel will generate excess demand for other forms of transport. Those who are starting secondary school now in 2019 will be 43 in 2050. Thinking about what education is appropriate for a very different set of industries is a key question. Should we still be training airplane pilots or aeronautical engineers? And they state this on implementation of the requirements. The change in behavior to achieve absolute zero are clearly substantial. In principle, these changes could be induced through changing prices and thus providing a clear incentive for behavior to change. In other words, they're going to make everything more expensive. The alternative is that the government prohibits certain types of behavior and regulates on production processes. You may be wondering how on earth they're going to get the support of the public in shutting the airports and stopping the consumption of beef and lamb and other meats, I would say. Also, turkey, pork, chickens. Now, well, we could argue, I don't know about fish. We can argue they are already, I guess that's going to be included because, the ships they're not going to have any ships. So the ships going out to ship to fish will not be producing. Now, well, you could argue that they're already well on their way to ensuring the closure of many airports thanks to the draconian laws that British people have been living under in the name of protecting the NHS and saving lives. Is it just a coincidence that 4 months after the release of the report, the UK government brought in the Coronavirus Act, implemented a national lockdown which has decimated the travel industry? A quick read through the report certainly suggests the real reason for lockdown may have been so that the government can meet its legal commitment to reduce emissions. They will get the support just as they got the support for implementing the draconian laws under the guise of stopping the pandemic, laws which have decimated small businesses, taken away freedoms, creating what will be the greatest health crisis to have ever been due to turning the NHS into the National COVID Center and then National Vaccination Service. They managed all the above through coercion, and it's not an opinion, it's fact. And it's all documented in official UK government documents. And they are going to use the exact same tactics to ensure you allow all airports to close and never eat beef or lamb again. And that is what the Absolute Zero report recommends the UK government implements to achieve their legally required targets. This is by Niamh Harris on News Punch. Now let's keep in mind, though, that even though the Western world is drastically reducing emissions, there are other countries like Russia and China and India that it's to no avail what the West is doing. The other countries are just continuing to pollute. So leave your comments, please, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.